by INEC as the winner of the presidential elections. I've got Amara Wankpa now joining me on the show. Amara, how are you?
Oh, well, doing as well as can be under the circumstances.
Okay. What was your general assessment of the entire elections process?
Well, I think it's the worst election I've been part of, and I've observed elections in Nigeria since 2011.
Okay.
On every metric. I mean, in terms of the level of preparedness of INEC, in terms of the process itself, the perception of the process, in terms of the ease of the process for voters, in terms of the level of disenfranchisement, in terms of the level of violence, in terms of transparency of the results, collation, and so on. This was very bad. This was a terrible outing by INEC. Not just in terms of what we witnessed on TV and the questions about the collation process and the credibility of the results, but even on the ground, in terms of just how the process went. I mean, at the collation center where I was observing, there were lots of problems with voters insisting that they had been disenfranchised. There were lots of complaints about the fact that, none of the BVAS machines were able to upload presidential election results. A lot of the coppers complained of lack of support, difficulties operating the BVAS system, and challenges in general. And the logistics were very difficult for them because a lot of them said we hadn't slept for 2 days, we hadn't eaten, no water. And so just even the basics, lots of challenges with it.
Amara Wankpa Lagos is the Director of Public Policy Initiatives at the Shehu Musa Yaradua Foundation. It's interesting, Amara, as you were speaking, I took a look at IREV, and at the moment, we still don't have all the results from all 176,000 polling units uploaded. We currently have 141,172 results uploaded on IREV. And at the time that the INEC chairman, Mahmoud Yakubu, declared Bola Tinubu the winner, less than 75% of polling units had results of any sort on IREV. What does this say to you, Amara, about INEC's compliance with its own electoral guidelines?
Well, I would say that INEC did not inspire any confidence in its credibility in the way it handled election results, especially because the INEC chairman has spent the most of last year, the better part of last year, advertising and marketing these new sets of technology innovations that have been introduced into the electoral process, and just how much these technology improvements were going to change the election and improve transparency of election results. What we experienced was a complete opposite of all the things that INEC had promised, including what was advertised or mandated in the Electoral Act, Section 64. 6, I think subsection 6, that talks about how disputes during collation are supposed to be handled with recourse to the election results that have been transmitted from the polling unit. Unfortunately, you couldn't have done that if there were no election results that were transmitted to the polling unit. INEC itself acknowledged that there were glitches with its IREV portal, but we know that the system was offline. People were not able to upload presidential results during the period when polls were actually closing. And so at the time when collation at the ward level was happening in Nigeria, we did not have any results at the presidential results on the IREV to compare. And so disputes about what was being recorded on the result sheets in the collation centers could not be addressed with recourse to Section 64 of the Electoral Act.
Okay. I've got Chief Andy Obuoforibo in the studio with me as well. Lagos, you can join the conversation too. 0700-993-993-993 01465-7190. Chief, INEC said that on the election day, the presidential election portal for IREV went down. We've been talking about that before Amara joined, right? We didn't get an official statement about this from INEC. In fact, I think I'm going to come to Amara with this question, right? So, Amara, we didn't get an official written statement about this from INEC until the next day. But I want to talk about election day itself, Amara. How do you feel about INEC's real-time handling of the outage, that outage? Did they do enough to let voters know what was happening and what they were doing to fix it?
Well, I was not aware of any communication that went out from INEC that showed any transparency about what was going on. Even the coppers who were in the field, who were ostensibly representing INEC in conducting the elections, were not aware that they were not going to be able to upload election results. The RATEX, who were supposed to provide technical support in registration areas for these coppers, were not aware. There was no bulletin out there to observers, to voters, to let us know that there are potential challenges with uploading results from polling units, and as a result that presidential results will not be visible on this IREF portal until these issues are resolved. And that, offline transmission will be the mode, information will be stored on the beavers, safely and all of that. All of that information was not communicated to all the key stakeholders on election day. And remember, this is critical technology. This is critical because it was mentioned in the Act. I don't think that it was included in the Electoral Act because people wanted to just write something. It had to be included because the people of Nigeria, through their representatives in the parliament, saw this as something critical to the electoral process.
Right. Chief, you and I have been talking about this for quite a while, so Lagos already knows where your head is at as far as this is concerned. I will ask you, however, about this traffic thing that INEC talked about. We were talking about it briefly before we had to go to Abuja and listen to the president-elect speak. INEC says that the portal went down because it was getting traffic from all over the country. We've talked a lot about INEC's massive ICT budget for this election, over 100 billion naira. You both worked in tech, so this is a question I'll also be asking Amara. You both worked in tech. Does it make sense for INEC, with that much money, to have built a system that couldn't handle 176,000 uploads in one day, and not knowing that this would happen ahead of time?
Yeah, Sandra, it makes no sense at all. I think when you hear, again, like I said before the break and before Amara joined us, 176,000 polling units, right? So even if all 176,000 were trying to send their data at once with their beavers at once, like it's supposed to be trivial. That's a trivially small amount of traffic to handle.
Okay.
So I don't buy that for one moment. That the system was overloaded, and so that's why there's some places there were glitches. I don't buy that.
Okay.
You can't say that. And as Amara has said, it's clear that the portal was offline. Hi, Amara.
Amara.
Hi.
Amara, do you agree with Chief?
Yes, I very much agree with him in terms of the fact that this kind of traffic is trivial to the kinds of IT infrastructure that even small companies, small businesses use. I mean, look at how many emails we send in Nigeria every day with attachments, and they leave. They exit your mailbox in a very short time, and they are delivered. And these are millions of transactions that are happening. You have banks who are completing ATM transactions. millions of those transactions every day. And so this is a very ridiculous excuse by INEC. Also, in terms of design, the portal that is supposed to be open to the public should be separate from the system that collates the uploads from the beavers. And so that load from the beavers end of the election is trivial, it's small. And it should have been separated. Any basic design would definitely separate the private restricted part of this system from the public facing one. So the excuse that requests from public to view the portal interfered with traffic that was coming from the field and caused it not to arrive. I can't fathom it. It's not something I can't wrap my head around, because it's either the design of the system was horribly incompetent, or they are not telling us the truth. In any case, the best way to answer this issue is to have an independent audit of the system to determine why a critical system like this failed at a time when it was needed the most. It's not INEC that should tell us, because INEC's credibility is shot. INEC is now in the accused dock and therefore cannot be the judge and the accused in their own case. And therefore, this should be an independent evaluation of the process to determine what has happened and why the system failed.
Okay. Lagos, join the conversation. 0700-993-993-993. That's for men. Women, call us on 01465-7190. We've got messages on WhatsApp, and I want to read your thoughts as well. So please send those messages over. WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. 080-959-75805. Hello, how you doing? Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name, ma'am?
My name is Lucky. I'm calling from Lagos.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was watching, I've refused to go online today because I'm just tired.
Okay.
However, I was watching some video yesterday of a young, I'm sure she's a millennial, or a Gen Z.
Okay.
And she was saying she's a computer, a software engineer.
Yeah.
And, as a software engineer, when you're building some sort of software for things like this, you will have tested it before you put it into the marketplace, or before you put it out for use. I'm questioning INEC. Was this not done before this whole thing? Because it looks to me like this whole election has been concluded before we even voted. From the look of things, I question INEC from announcing the president-elect before everybody woke up this morning. I woke up, like you said, at about 6 a.m. And I'm seeing speeches already going out. I find that very funny. We saw pictures and videos of President Jonathan yesterday going to greet Ahmed Tinubu at home, saying congratulations to him. A lot of things that already shows to me that this was already concluded before we even voted.
Okay, so I have to correct.
I had to lodge a VI on Friday because I wanted to vote. I couldn't move my card. I had to move my husband, my mom. We all slept in VI so that we were able to vote. Had to pay money to lodge in a hotel. I got to my polling unit, and you don't even want me to go into the story of the things that happened. So I think it's not just fair on Nigerians. This is far from being free and fair, this election. And I don't know. I'm not supporting any party.
Okay.
I'm not a partisan.
Okay.
But I don't think they were fair on Nigerians. And I think INEC should be questioned.
All right, thank you very much for calling. I will say, however, that former President Goodluck Jonathan went to Bola Tinubu's house, as well as Peter Obi's house, as well as Rabiu Kwankwaso's house, as well as Atiku Abubakar's house, as part of a delegation to ensure that people maintain the peace, the tensions cooled down a bit. So I know that propagandists are propagating, but he came out. I'm talking about former President Jonathan now. He came out afterwards to say, this is the reason why I went there with delegates from West Africa to go and see the major presidential candidates and essentially try and get them to maintain the peace. Let me come back and take a few more calls. 99.3. Sorry about that. Call us back if you can. 99.3. Hello. Hello? Hello, are you there? Okay, that's unfortunate. 99.3.
Hello, Sandra.
How you doing? What's your name, ma'am?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hello?
Okay, doesn't look like she can hear me. 99.3.
Good afternoon, Sandra.
Good afternoon. What's your name, sir?
You have Emmanuel on the line.
Emmanuel, welcome. Go ahead.
I'm disappointed in the INEC chairman.
Okay.
And this is a message to the head of our agency and parastatals. Follow what you say. You can't raise people's hope and then dash it in the board. It's not fair. Then, this election seems to be a lot of conspiracy. Yesterday, the INEC chairman promised to come up at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. He came up later at 4:30 or so. The PDP gave a press conference around 2. Was he waiting for the APC to reply the PDP? Then I wake up this morning hearing the news speeches. I was like, what is going on? Before I knew, and yesterday he said they were going to handle 10 states. Then if he said they are going to handle 10 states, 14 states remaining, it means the 4 states we did today, and probably by 11 a.m. today, then the declaration will be like maybe by 3 or 4. So I don't understand what is going on, but let's see how it goes.
All right, Emmanuel, thanks for calling. I will say, however, that the INEC chairman continued announcing states at 11 and then took a brief break, and he was going to come back and finish the rest of the announcement. However, the declaration at 4 a.m. Was a bit sus. That's what a lot of people have said. But some others have said, well, it was simply a procedural thing. Now, we've got a break coming up, so I have time to only take a message from social media, and then, gentlemen, I'll come back and talk to both of you about some other questions I have about the entire process in general. We've got this message here from Ohaji Richard. Ohaji Richard on Facebook says, for my own say, I can't wait for Buhari to leave. I've already bought live chicken to kill on that day. I thank God for helping me and my family survive Buhari's leadership. All right. Order Godwin Itiong says, INEC scored minus 10% as far as I'm concerned. The manipulation was so obvious, and INEC justifying the win at all costs. Let's proceed to court. It's so unfortunate. Godwin, thank you very much for your message. I have a lengthy message here from Ridwan. I don't have the time to take it. But when we come back from this break, I will take that question. Hopefully, Dr. Sam Amadi joins us at 5 p.m. When he does, he's a lawyer, so he'll be able to address the legal question that this particular listener is asking via WhatsApp. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. I've got the Director of Public Policy Initiatives at Shehu Musa Yaradua Foundation on the show with me. I've got a political affairs analyst on the show with me as well. Amara Wankba is here. Chief Andy Obuoforibo is here. Lagos. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Fans consuming great news at www.nigeriainfo.fm and get rewarded for your time. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
It's 2 minutes alphabets and African names with Auntie Noma.
Boys and girls,
It's another day of alphabet adventures with me, Auntie Noma. Can you remember King Kwesi and the kites? Can you remember what country he's from? Yes, Ghana. Do you know that Ghanaians may be named according to the day of the week in which they are born? There is a name for every day of the week. Wow. It's Wednesday today, and if you were Ghanaian and born today, your Ghanaian name, weekday name, would be Kweku if you're a boy and Aqua if you're a girl. That's if you speak the Akan language, which is mainly spoken in southern Ghana. Lots of new names today. Can you say them? Kwesi, the kind king. Kweku, the boy born on Wednesday. Aqua, the girl born on Wednesday. And how about Akan, the language spoken in the south of Ghana? I hope our wonderful teachers, dads and moms, grandparents and adult helpers will help you remember these. Have fun trying them out. I'm honored to meet you, King Kwesi. Kweku and Aqua, would you like to meet the king? Maybe he'll teach us a few more words in Akan. Well, friends, that's all for now. Join me tomorrow, Thursday, for another 2-minute adventure with alphabet and African names. From me, Auntie Noma, is bye-bye.
And that was 2 minutes alphabet and African names with Auntie Noma.
Popular football leagues all around the world are starting to get into full swing. You could walk away with Betway's 500,000 Naira Beats the Odds grand prize, plus amazing weekly free bet prizes. Visit the Beat the Odds page today, make your predictions, and continue climbing the leaderboards to go into the draw to win weekly cash and free bet prizes. The more predictions you make, the better your chances of walking away with a grand prize. Enter now at betway.com.ng. No under 18. Terms and conditions apply.
With 3 spectacular debaters, Group C of the I Beg to Differ Tournament of Champions could be a fight to the finish. Emmanuel Nadi has only ever lost once to Tamvita Kaushik. She's here to prove that she can beat anyone on a good day. Nicholas Musokoya barely missed the August 2022 final, but gave us fireworks along the way. He would have met Fabian Chibundu in that final, but now they will lock horns at the Tournament of Champions. Fabian, the only boy champion, must fend off these 2 challengers if he wants to be champion of champions. This March, it's the I Beg to Differ Tournament of Champions on 99.3 Nigeria Info and Wazobia Max TV.
Everyone is at the table for lunch. Mom is bringing in the jollof rice, and then...
Hey, John!
Sorry, Mom.
Hello? Can I order some jollof rice to be delivered?
Mama saves the day. Lunch is here.
Mom, I got some Coke too.
Just come and eat, Joe.
Cook up memorable moments because family lunch and an ice cold Coke make a recipe for wonder. Coca-Cola, real wonder.
Hello, Mrs. Martins.
Yes. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, how may I help you?
Junior's body temperature is high and he's complaining about headaches and body aches.
Not to worry. Get Bruston and suspension.
Okay, ma. I'll call you back.
Bruston and Suspension for Children is a sweet-tasting brand of ibuprofen which provides relief against toothache, pains, and fever in children after 30 minutes.
Hello, ma. Oh, Junior, stop that.
Is everything okay, Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, ma. Junior is fine now. In fact... Junior! Sorry, ma. I'll call you back.
Brustin and Suspension for Children. Always take the product after meal. If symptoms persist after 2 days, consult your doctor. A quality product from Rambaxay.
Moves must be made. My people just to work hard. Dreams and challenges motivate us. But sometimes, when the journey gets tiring, all we need is something to push our limits.
Reactor, ignite your energy, bring out your inner champion. Reactor, ignite your energy, bring out your inner champion.
Reactor Energy Drink. What you need to push your limits.
Wow.
push your limits.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
Your number one station for talk. Let's talk.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Nigeria has a new president-elect, Bola Tinubu. He has just been giving his certificate of return. He spoke to you as well after he got that certificate. What did you take away from that speech? You can also let me know. Lagos 0700993 I've got an analyst on the show with me, Chief Andy Obuoforibo. He's been covering these elections with me since Saturday. I've also got the Director Public Policy Initiatives for Shehu Musa Yaradua Foundation, Amara Wankpa. He's on the phone and we're talking about the entire process. Amara, I have to ask, right? Before you joined us, Chief and I were talking about the INEC guidelines, right? Chief says that the guidelines are clear and that collation officers must use the uploaded results on IREV to cross-check the paper results. Is that also your interpretation of the guidelines, Samara?
Yes, in fact, I think it was August 25, 2022. INEC tweeted 4 slides that explained electronic transmission of results, how it worked, how it was backed by law, and how it was incorporated in the collation process. And that precisely is the understanding.
Okay, all right. So he says very clearly, yes, it was very clear. Do you believe that Mahmoud Yakubu, as returning officer for the presidential election, had enough grounds to cancel the election, Amara?
I don't know. That's a matter that needs a lot. We need a lot more information to be able to make that decision. Unfortunately, we don't have access to all that information, and we didn't have access to it at the time when collation was happening. The assumption in the process was that when collation was happening, election results would have been transmitted from the polling unit, with maybe a few odd results not available, but most of the results would have been transmitted from the polling unit. That's not what happened. And so it's difficult for us to say if there was no transparency. We can't see enough of the process to know whether there was enough ground. The only thing we know is that there were serious issues with the process, serious allegations, serious challenges, and a lot of evidence put on social media of result sheets that appear like they were seriously manipulated. In fact, discrepancies between what INEC was declaring and pictures that social media users had taken in their polling units.
Chief, do you disagree with Amara or do you agree with Amara?
Oh, I agree with Amara. I agree with Amara that we don't have enough visibility or clarity about whether there was enough evidence for Professor Yakubu to cancel the presidential election. Definitely, I agree with Amara, and again, I agree with Amara that the reason for that is that there's been a lack of transparency from INEC. What we do know is that there was definitely enough evidence for Professor Yakubu as returning officer to call for review of some of the results coming to him from some states, because like what the Electoral Act, so that's a separate thing from cancellation. Cancellation is okay, you know what, this election is bad, we don't do it again, it's over, we'll come back and redo it or whatever. But a smaller measure than cancellation is reviewing of results. And the electoral guidelines are clear. The Electoral Act and the guidelines INEC put out last year are very clear that in any situation where it is raised that that a result being collated and being passed up the collation chain is not based on what is being shown on BVAS, it's in conflict with what is being shown on IREV that was uploaded by BVAS from the portal, that the collation officer can call for a review and correct it, and that the returning officer, which in this case, in the presidential election, was Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, can also do the same. Now, again, and the electoral guidelines are clear that, because you can say, oh well, how could they have done that if there was no BVAS and if there was no IREV in some places? The electoral guidelines are clear. In those situations, what the returning officer is meant to do is call for, where BVAS didn't work, call for the result sheets signed by the agents, the copies that were handed to the agents at the polling units, and the copy handed to the police. Those are what will be used to determine the truth of what happened at the election. Now, none of that was done. I don't think there was a single, because by the point that Dino Melaye and all these other agents of those opposition parties were shouting in front of Professor Yakubu, those results had come from the states. The scopes were bringing those results from the states and saying these results are fine. Now, this was now the last level of check. And you had, at that last level of check, you had returning officers from some political parties saying, there's discrepancy between IREV and these results coming. The discrepancy is based on the fact that some results are not even on IREV at all. And those results, without being cross-checked, are coming here. Based on my reading of the guidelines, at least, that's enough ground for Professor Yakubu not to cancel the election, but to say, oh, okay, state ABC, bring up your IREV, let's see. Oh, there's no IREV. Oh, let's go and let's review. Let's go back and look at the copies given to the agents at polling unit, copies given to... But Professor Yakubu never did that once.
But giving, and Amara, I'm coming to you with this question, and I'll come back to Chief. Giving INEC's, when you go beyond 2023, right, and you look at past elections, is there a general reluctance within INEC when it comes to addressing irregularities with collation, Amara?
Well, I think this is obvious in the process that we just witnessed. Despite the fact that we were told before this election that INEC had specifically introduced this process and the technology to enable them to be able to address these challenges. And what has happened is a spectacular failure of credibility, of process, and of technology. In fact, if you look at the Electoral Act, section 64, subsection 5, it says, subject to the subsection 1, and a collation officer or returning officer shall, not may, shall,
that's right,
use the number of accredited voters recorded and transmitted directly from the polling units under subsection 47.2 of this Act, and the votes or results recorded and transmitted directly from the polling units under section 64 of this Act to collate and announce the results of an election. If a collated result at his or a lower level of collation is not correct.
Okay, Chief.
I think I'm glad Amara read that out, because it's right there for all to see. That's, and like Amara pointed out, and I said that.
And you said that earlier. You said
shall,
that earlier.
not may. It's not at your discretion. As a returning officer, as a collating officer, you don't have discretion. You don't have a choice. You must use the IREV data. You must use it. That is, if you don't use the IREV data, anything that you have produced as a result as a collation officer is not correct. It is illegal. It's right there.
It's right there.
But what happens is that this is what always happens, right? INEC will just add up anything. Like collation officers, returning officers will ignore what was done at lower levels and write a new result. And in the old days, is you go to sleep, you're celebrating, hey, my candidate has won. You go to sleep and wake up in the morning and it's like, another result has been announced. Why? Because results changed at collation somewhere. RAC collation or LGA collation or state collation. Somewhere up the chain, results changed. And anytime it happens, whether it's Mahmoud Yakubu or whether it is Atahiru Jega or whether it's Maurice Iwu, I have seen it over and over and over. The INEC chairman just looks at the people protesting, looks at them stoically, shrugs his shoulders, and announces his result. So it's clear that INEC has decided as an institution that any mathematics we do, even if it's bad, if you like complain, take it like that, go to court.
I need both of you to put on your policy hats now, right? Because you're both policy guys as well. I love when I have guests that have done different things. After seeing what you saw in this election and seeing how even good technology and guidelines can be ignored, Amara, what policies and systems do you think Nigerians should struggle to put in place to make INEC more accountable at each step? Amara, I'll start with you. Chief, I'll come to you afterwards. Amara?
I think the entire system has to be overhauled. I don't think that there is enough after the fact accountability built into the electoral process in Nigeria. I think the design of the system is to prevent manipulation, malpractice before it happens, not to hold people accountable after they have subverted the system. For some of us who have experience in information security, we know that there is no system you can design that is foolproof. There is nothing you can design. In fact, you will just increase the cost of implementing the system exorbitantly without necessarily getting any additional benefit in terms of its ability to prevent any malpractice. What you need is a robust system for accountability after the fact. How do we gather information about who did what, who didn't do what, and what are the punishments for doing X or not doing Y? So, for instance, if I asked you now, who was the presiding officer for CPS polling unit in Degama, for instance, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the assistant polling officer? Who is the queue controller? Who is the clerk? Who is the person who is authorized by law to sign the election results? You don't know. So, for instance, if the person, they can't be held accountable after the fact. We can't go and take this person to an electoral offences tribunal and say you have broken the law. And this applies to every role that is necessary for conducting the election. Whether you are providing election security, whether you are providing material, whether it's your responsibility to convey material. Everybody involved in the electoral process has to be accredited the same way, and there has to be accountability attached to the work that they do. So if, for instance, you as a driver conveying sensitive material decide to drive off, park somewhere until 2 p.m. and disenfranchise voters, how do we know who you are to make sure that you are punished for what you didn't do, which was your duty, under the Electoral Act?
Mm-hmm.
So until we have redesigned this system and reformed this system so it is easy to hold people accountable, then it's hard, because we have conversations about governors interfering with the process, but they are using people, and those people are nameless.
And those people are nameless. Chief?
Yeah, I'm going to first of all agree with 100% with everything Amara is saying there about post-election accountability. It also ties in very well with something, Sandra, you and I have talked about here when we were talking about the underage voters being seen on the portal.
Right.
Like we say, it's not enough for INEC to remove those voters from the portal. Somebody at a polling unit, an INEC staff, registered that person.
Right.
Shouldn't that, and that one is even easy to trace because INEC knows who they sent to that polling unit.
Right.
Shouldn't that person be penalized? Right.
Right.
Same thing with elections. Right. Now, and I've always said this for years. If I'm a rec and I conduct an election and I return a governor as a governor elect,
right,
and then later the court rules that in that election there was malpractice and that I had clear evidence of malpractice, but I, as the rec who supervised that election, still allowed that result to stand. Shouldn't I, lose my job as a rec,
right,
and shouldn't I too be prosecuted automatically? Because the mere fact that the tribunal overturned the election result, it now concerns the election. So shouldn't that automatically trigger? I also believe to have go back to another point Amara made before the break. Amara said at this point when people are saying INEC didn't follow the rules, that means INEC is now the accused. What we saw in this process was that the accused got to judge. So Mahmoud Yakubu was being asked by the opposition parties to judge himself and decide whether or not he's following the guidelines. And of course, he will say yes. Like I said, it's only Umaru Musa Yar'Adua is the only man that says, yes, I'm a beneficiary of a bad system. Everybody else says, no, what we did was perfectly good. So Mahmoud Yakubu, of course, will say no. What I think is that we need to have 2 tiers of real-time judgment during elections. One tier...
Isn't that what the observers are there for?
No, observers don't have any power. One tier is what INEC is doing now, which is INEC is judging whether the political parties are doing the right thing, voters are doing the right thing, etc., etc. INEC also judges whether the people, each level of INEC judges whether the level below it has done the right thing. But at the same time, I think before we jump levels, in the same way that you have mobile courts that will assess you on the spot,
right,
we need to have better at all levels, some sort of on-the-spot assessment of what INEC is doing there with the weight of law, which allows in that moment for political parties, for the public, for the police or whoever to step in and in that moment try INEC.
But again, we're having to rely on other members of other institutions who often are accused of conniving with INEC.
Then that's why we
to allegedly, derail the process.
That's why you have to make it adversarial. At the end of the day, Sandra, we're not going to find those robots from another place who don't have an alignment. Even the courts, the judges in the tribunals all go home and they come from somewhere and they have connections to somebody. But the more eyes you have on a process and the more conflicting interests you have adversarially working in that process, the harder it is for these things to happen. I think ultimately what we need is a system where when a case has been reported to INEC and INEC has not taken action, or when the report is about INEC itself, in that moment, maybe put a magistrate there, and in that moment, let us have the political parties be able to raise that issue separate from INEC without INEC judging it.
Lagos, join the conversation 01465 7190 0700 993 993 993. I've got this message here on WhatsApp from Ridwan. Ridwan says that some professor and also a lecturer of law Unilag said that the main and prime role of us was for the accreditation of voters, while transfer of election by the device is just a added feature to it, which can actually be carried out by any other electronic device, since the beavers can only snap the result which has been recorded by the score sheet, which has been signed by party agents. And this glorifies the score sheet over the beavers, because with the score sheets, the function of beavers transferring the result is rendered useless.
No, that's incorrect. That professor needs to stop misleading his students and the public. I think Amara has read out very clearly here what the election guidelines say. These are the same lecturers and professors who sit as returning officers and scopes and INEC chairman. It is very clear what the electoral guideline says. I don't know why I have to correct a professor or a lecturer, but it says clearly that the only way to ascertain a result is if that result rhymes with what is uploaded on IREV. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter whether the upload on IREV was typed out or in this case as prescribed in the guidelines was photographed and sent sent electronically as a photograph to be uploaded. The law says before you can endorse a result at collation, you must compare what was handed to you in that sealed envelope in a paper EC8A result sheet, compare it with what you see on your screen on iRev. If it is the same result, then you shall endorse it. If it is not the same result, you shall correct it, make it what you see on the screen, and force that junior officer, the presiding officer, to endorse it.
Perhaps Amara disagrees. Amara?
I don't disagree. I actually support what he said. And in addition, what I wanted to say was that if you don't have a framework for accountability, then there is no motivation for people to do the right thing. You see, you have to force INEC to open up their belly. Because a lot of what INEC does right now is not transparent. You don't know much about how INEC conducts elections. The law has to force INEC to disclose. So, for instance, if somebody was discussing with me on Twitter and say, oh, well, by the way, maybe the BVAS worked, at least on the role of authentication. We don't know that. As someone who has worked on identity management systems, at national level, I can tell you that just because you see a facial recognition thing go green, doesn't mean that the software is working. The only way to ascertain is to do an audit of what has been captured versus what it compared with, and whether there was actually verification that was going on behind the scenes. And what was the level of confidence of that verification? And that happens by an independent test, benchmarking of these devices and these systems. However, we don't know if INEC has benchmarked the systems, if the systems meet any international standard that apply to them. We don't know anything about that. The only thing we know is that this system, which, by the way, this is not the first time that IREV has been used in elections in Nigeria, national elections. All we know is that this system has failed. And there is no way for us to even determine what component of the system failed, why did it fail, who was responsible for the failure of the system, what decisions were taken in INEC that resulted in this catastrophic failure that we've experienced. And how can we prevent it in future? How can we collectively learn as a society about the problems of technology with elections? Because we put so much faith in this technology and it has failed us. And INEC is not giving us enough information to learn together as a society about the pitfalls or the potential pitfalls of putting so much faith in technology. Now, I believe that INEC needs to be subjected to more scrutiny. This situation where INEC is the provider of the information, the decider on the information, and the umpire at the same time is a problem.
All right, Amara, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Amara Mwampa is the Director of Public Policy Initiatives at the Shehu Musa Yaradua Foundation. Thank you for your time today, Amara.
Thank you.
All right, Lagos, we'll take a break. When we come back from this break, I'll have Dr. Sam Amadi join us at 5 o'clock. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been declared as president-elect of Nigeria. We're talking about the process that got him there. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Don't go away.
Move. My people just to work hard.
intrigue and suspense for just 3,400 naira. See your favorite stars in DJ, Flawson, and House of Dragon betray, gossip, and uncover secrets in an exclusive epic showdown only on Showmax. Dial *777# to stream them all. Glow Unlimited.
Hello, Mrs. Martins.
Yes. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, how may I help you?
Junior's body temperature is high, and he's complaining about headaches and body aches.
Not to worry. Get Bruston and suspension.
Okay, ma. I'll call you back.
Bruston End Suspension for Children is a sweet-tasting brand of ibuprofen which provides relief against toothache, pains, and fever in children after 30 minutes.
Hello, ma. Oh, Junior, stop that.
Is everything okay, Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, ma. Junior is fine now. In fact, Junior, sorry, ma. I'll call you back.
Bruston End Suspension for Children. Always take the product after meal. If symptoms persist after 2 days, consult your doctor. A quality product from Rambaxay.
The only detergent that keeps me bright and fresh. I know they waste time to wash. I thought my clothes deserve the best, so why go less? You can't wash a lot with a little Viva. Use Viva. Don't waste your time, don't waste your money. Use Viva. Viva, oh Viva. I love my Viva. Don't need no other. I love my Viva forever. Viva, oh Viva. I love my Viva. Don't need no other. I love my Viva forever. Viva, oh Viva. I love my Viva. Don't need no other. I love my Viva forever.
Viva detergent, a quality cleaning powder from Aspira.
Welcome back to your number one talk, news, and sports station. This is Nigeria Info.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. I still have Chief Andy Obuoforibo in the studio with me. We're taking a look at the process that got us a new president-elect, at least. I'm talking about Bola Tinubu. Chief, before Amara left the phone call, he was talking about the electoral process and INEC, right? And he said that INEC needs a lot more oversight than it currently does. This is a sentiment that I've also heard you share. It's a sentiment that I've also heard a lot of people who have been reviewing, appraising the conduct of the polls share. What would this oversight look like? What should it look like? Who should be oversighting them?
So I think we have a situation, and Beavers gives us that possibility. You know, I believe in being incremental. I believe in building on what you already have. So you see take what you already have and see what you improve it. Now, Beavers gives us that power. So, for example, now imagine if we did it the American way. For example, in an American election, at all the collation centers, right? The people who are there counting and canvassing, every political party is represented. In fact, the staff, like the equivalent of INEC staff at all of those units, are not actual staff. They are nominated by each political party. So each political party has an equal number of officials sitting there, and if they don't agree, that result does not move.
Isn't that what party agents are?
No, party agents here under the Electoral Act, all the party agents do is sign and not sign. And then if the party agents don't sign, INEC is supposed to look into it. But all over Nigeria, party agents didn't sign. The thing came to Professor Yakubu, and he shrugged his shoulders and ignored it because there's no penalties for ignoring that.
Okay.
Right?
Hold that thought. We're going to take a break now. We'll take a break. We'll bring you headline news, and then we're going to be joined by Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Sam Amadi is the Director, Center for Public Policy and Research. Let's bring you headlines.
The headline news on 99 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Here are the news headlines. President-elect Bola Tinubu received certificate of return from INEC. Sanwo-Olu joins in congratulating President-elect Tinubu, while INEC promises to review issues surrounding 2023 elections. Labour Party vice presidential candidate Yusuf Dati Ahmed insists the party will contest the electoral results. President Buhari believes the challenges encountered during the presidential election did not pose a challenge to the transparency of the electoral process. Spokesman of INEC chairman condemns call for resignation of principal. Senate President Ahmed Lawan congratulates President-elect Tinubu, claims there is no electronic transmission of results in Electoral Act. Police urges Nigerians to discountenance reports of arrest over BVAS manipulation, and Just Fontaine, all-time top scorer in a single World Cup finals, dies at 89. Those are the headlines. It's back to Hard Facts with Sandra.
Thank you very much, Vaughn, for bringing us headlines. We've got Dr. Sarah Amadi on the line. Dr. Amadi, good to have you on the show. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Yes. I want to start with this statement from the outgoing Senate President, Ahmad Lawan. He claims that there's no electronic transmission of results in the Electoral Act. Now, you are a lawyer, so please tell us, is he correct?
He's not correct. I don't want to say he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's not correct. What he is saying is that the National Assembly did not expressly mandate electoral transmission. The National Assembly, the Electoral Act says that first, in the clause says the INEC will determine the procedure for transmitting results. INEC, pursuant to that power, under Section 60, enacts the regulation and guideline for election, and expressly states the procedure for transmitting results. Okay. Now, the POs and all the electoral workers are guided by the guideline. Now, the guideline is not like a student's thesis, but a thesis. The guideline is by law a law. There are three classes of law, and each of them have legal validity in any court or any public institution in Nigeria. One is the Constitution. The next is Act of National Assembly, like the Electoral Act, the Central Bank Act, the Electric Power Sector Reform Act. Third is what we call subsidiary legislation, laws made by agencies and institutions delegated by the law to make so. So, for example, we had COVID-19. The Quarantine Act provides for a regulation that says when it's established that there's a pandemic or epidemic, Mr. President, acting under this act, can make guidelines. Is that guideline that says nobody should go out, movement is suspended, and control people's action. Those guidelines are law. Now, two things. Even after the guidelines, Section 38 of the Electoral Act, Section 47 and Section 148, all talks about mandating electronic transfers. But the guideline expressly provides how to do it. Talks about after voting, the PO, after counting, will transmit electronically to the INEC server, the IRF. It especially says the IRF. Each of these is procedures that must be taken. So, legally speaking and constitutionally, every court will say it's a guideline, it's a law, it's binding. The only way that INEC had prescribed portion to the power that the National Assembly gave it. And by the way, this is how it works. The problem with Nigerian leaders and those who support them, that they don't even understand administrative law, they don't read or act as they know. Legislatures do not make laws to provide for details. They leave that secondary legislation to agencies. That's what the Central Bank Act says. The Central Bank can make regulations guiding open market operations, OMO, or other monetary policies. So when the Central Bank makes those guidelines, they must follow them or they remake it. Again, I was chairman and chief executive of NEC. The Electric Power Sector Act said that NEC should develop a methodology for fixing prices. So what NEC did in 2008 was to develop that methodology. After developing it, it becomes a law. NEC is now bound to follow that methodology in pricing. Whenever he feels that that methodology is outdated, because you had a choice of whether to use cost plus theory, use price cap, use cost plus, or other methodology. You chose one. Any moment, maybe through research, you discover that that methodology is not working. You initiate due process rulemaking again and establish a different one. You can't change it. It's equivalent again. Let me give you an example. The Constitution in Section 30, Section 46 says that the Chief Justice of Nigeria shall make fundamental human rights rules that will determine how any person who wants to claim violation of his right under Chapter 2 of the Constitution can go to the court. In 1979, I think, the first ways or so, the Justice of the Supreme Court made the rules. Those rules have been amended subsequently in 2004 and up to now. Now, you can't go to no court will ever take on a human rights case without those guidelines. Those procedural rules were set up by the Chief Justice pursuant to the power in the Constitution. The same way Mahmoud and his board set up the guidelines pursuant to the powers given them by Lawal and his colleagues in Section 60. So the same with the courts, they go to the same court that gave them the right to vote for election, even though they didn't do primary and didn't win any primary. That court follows court rules. Those court rules are not made by the National Assembly. The National Assembly sets up the Federal High Court Act, and that act gives the chief judge the power to make those rules. And no court, no judge will sit and tell you that he has decided in his wisdom to follow a different procedure. The judge must follow that procedure that he himself, the chief judge, made his capacity as chief judge pursuant to power the National Assembly gave him under the Federal High Court law. That's what Mahmoud and Co did. So by December, the same Mahmoud Yakub on national television in the press conference said, it is not true that we are going to jettison. We made this rule. We are determined to follow our rule. So it's a no-brainer that the election we declared is unlawful. He flagrantly violated the law that guides election, and the court will say so. I've no doubt about that.
Now, before INEC announced the presidential results, LP, PDP, ADC, and other parties had been raising complaints about the use or non-use of IREV. Mahmoud Yakubu eventually did not address those issues, but instead, INEC asked them to go to court. Did INEC have the legal right to ignore those objections?
Well, INEC has the legal right to conduct election how they like, but the consequence flows. Okay, fine. What a reasonable and responsible regulator would have done, and what they do all over the world, is to ask them, gentlemen, can you put your complaints in writing as a formal petition, and you are joint sitting a couple of hours, even 24 hours, and take the hearing and dismiss it. You see, Mahmoud does not know that INEC is a quasi-judicial body. INEC is like a tribunal. Whenever it is sitting to collect and certify results, it becomes a court, a tribunal. It should have even procedure. INEC should have rules about filing that tells you if you want to petition, you go to INEC Secretariat, file it, get stamped, present it, and they will sit as adjudicators and hear it. So he bungled the procedure, and that's why the EU and NDI, those who know how this is done in civilized countries, not our legislators who sometimes behave as if they came from 14th century, communities. They know that an electoral manager is a judicial figure, even though he is not a judge. So what INEC have done is to say, okay, formalize these complaints. We sit. So they sit and express their mind. It doesn't matter whether they are wrong. They say, you know what, we have gone through these petitions. They are wrong. We dismiss them and continue. That's proper procedure. Anybody given a responsibility to take a decision can be right or wrong. You are legally protected. Once you make a decision, through due process. Just like a court. A court has the right to err. The court can err. Maybe as long as it's not for corruption. They look at the argument, they wrongly understood it, and they enter a wrong decision. That's fine. They have exercised their power validly, even though wrongly. So you go to Court of Appeal. They say, well, the learned judge misunderstood this text, wrongly applied the facts, and therefore came to a perverse decision. We reverse it. The same way you can go to court and the court says, INEC wrongly acted, we reverse it. So what INEC didn't do was that they didn't show any rigor, and it's so fundamentally, it's almost basic. It's kindergarten stuff for regulatory agencies like INEC, that there must be a rigor, a process. You follow that process, you make a decision. You are not God. You could be right or wrong. For example, the issue we raised about two-third, what is two-third? Whether Abuja needs to get involved in Abuja. It's a matter INEC would have issued a directive to say, look, this is our own interpretation of the law. Like I argued on Arise News, I said, every agency is the first interpreter of the act. They'll tell you this is what we understand it to be. Then if you don't agree with them, the court will validate or nullify them. But just play dead brain. That's so elementary and so reckless and so irresponsible. As somebody who's managing an election, national election, and that's why if you look at all the reports, apart from maybe AU, African Union is notorious for never speaking against African countries. But whether from ECOWAS, from EU, from RI, NDI, from local social room, from even CDD that is in cahoots with INEC all the time. Everybody says, you didn't get your procedural right. So I think that INEC really, this is the worst election we've conducted in terms of process. It doesn't matter the outcome. I mean, people misunderstand two things. When a process is wrong, when people are alleging process and rigging, it does not mean that the candidate could not have won. It does not mean that the candidate doesn't deserve to win. It doesn't mean that the candidate who is declared to elect is not qualified. It simply means that somebody bungled the process. So this is the worst election we've had. Since I became active from 1993 June 12th to today, the worst election we've had is this one conducted by Mahmoud Yakub, and it was reckless, wanton, invalidating his own code. We're not talking about maybe talks, disrupting voting. We're not talking about politicians working hard to undermine INEC. We're not talking about unknown gunmen, maybe scattering people from polling units. We're talking about INEC chairman gratuitously violating and disregarding his own rules. Something like this is a risk like Kafka's trial.
Lagos, if you just tuned in, you're listening to the voice of Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Sam Amadi is Director, Center for Public Policy and Research. I have as well with me political affairs analyst, Chief Andy Obuoforibo in the studio with me. Join the conversation, 0700-993-993-993, 01465-7190. You have a new president-elect. He's been issued his certificate of return. He has spoken to Nigerians twice now about how this entire process has made him feel. What do you think about the entire process and where we are at now? WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. Twitter at Nigeria Info FM. Facebook Nigeria Info 99.3. Hello, thank you for calling us.
Hello.
How you doing? What's your name, sir?
Yeah, good afternoon, Sandra.
Good afternoon. What's your name?
Okay, please, I would like to remain unidentified.
Anonymous, go ahead, please.
For now. Because I do serve as an agent in this election.
Okay.
Number one is that I have also looked at the IREM, checking the result from my unit over there. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I was an agent in the I've checked my own result from my own polling, which I signed. I have not seen it there, but somebody has been declared president. Well, what I know that this battle is not going to finish now. It is going to take a long time, but we know where we are going with it, except the judiciary will fail Nigerians and tell Nigerians or interpret the law in another way. But because we will do the right thing, we will go to court It is the court that we are following. They should act law. Because a polling unit, I snap this result. He feels that I should snap the result. That's number one. The other electorate who were there insisted I should snap the result. He refused that I should not snap the result. Even the valet of that community threatened my life. The other area boys threatened my life that I must not snap that result. And when that result was taken to the collation center, I have to follow up to see. When we got there, other party from the other party, they went there and they were, in fact, what was happening at that place, that is Ibejuleki that I'm talking now. What was happening there is what we know and what we are saying. And again, we need the security aid needs to up their game. They need to know what to do. Because these guys will just go into this place and influence the coalition, and they can do anything. Like I said, we are putting our hope now on the judiciary. Let us see what the judiciary will tell Nigerians that the law say concerning what the INEC did. Thank you.
Anonymous, thank you very much for calling. Dr. Amadi, you know, before you joined us, Chief and I, as well as Amara Wankpa, were having a conversation about oversight over INEC. Both gentlemen said that the problem is that INEC is the one who is the judge, jury, and executor in their own cases, even when they are the ones who are the accused. And right before you joined, I was asking Chief, what should that oversight look like? So I'm going to ask you that same question and then go back to Chief and let him finish his thoughts on that same question. Lots of people asking for more oversight over INEC. What should that oversight look like, Dr. Amadi? Hello, Dr. Amadi? Hello? Dr. Amadi, can you hear me?
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
The most fundamental oversight of INEC is actually the National Assembly. The National Assembly, INEC has consumed 3.205 billion, I think, of allocation. You can put in a lot of political support from here and there and produce nothing, confusion and failure. So the first is National Assembly. The point of National Assembly and INEC is that everybody oversighting INEC ends up being about romancing INEC. So these guys would see that INEC is basically an inefficient and incompetent organization. But what they want is to use their influence in the INEC committee to get romantic with INEC so that INEC will assist them to rig election. The other issue is the civil society. The civil society, who ought to be a watchdog in election matter, have become co-planners and executors, receiving billions themselves cumulatively in grants, and therefore has become a department of INEC. So they cause us a blind spot. We don't focus well. They come and, like Sola would say, they hold meeting everywhere. They massacre human beings. They hold all kinds of conferences, all kinds of things, just like distracting everybody and spend to the bank. So INEC has become a very unaccountable behemoth. The international community, the funders themselves, who have to spend money appropriated for their countries in also another sham and corruption, who the Yagas of this world, the CDDs of this world, just give them money to go and confuse people, write nonsense, come on television and speak about procedure, how to vote, and all this kind of nonsense. Thereby mask the corruption and the incompetence in INEC. Look at the primary. Look at how Ababio, look at how Lawal and MX, any of these civil society, leading civil society groups that are using billions of grants, speak out. So they confuse everybody, and now it's clear. Every election, they'll confuse us until election. Then after the election, they will write some silly reports. Saying, INEC, this. You are the ones who are propping up INEC. An inefficient, corrupt. By the way, Mahmoud Yakubu had a tenure in Ted Fund, and the first 4 years of Buhari, the House of Reps did a massive report that showed massive corruption and questionable things that were nobody prosecuted, nobody pushed it. So the Nigerian political establishment needs a corrupt and inefficient INEC. There are many people in this country who are 100% honest. At least there are few of them. Nobody's going to appoint the head of finance. You saw when Jonathan, who meant well, who people can say naive, appointed a Jega. Forget the shortcomings of the election. You can see a high level of honesty and commitment not because he's a professor. What's a professor? All of us are professors. It doesn't really matter. What matters is their pedigree, their personal honesty, demonstrated in where you have held office, demonstrated what they have done before. So what we have seen in INEC is that INEC is we create a big behemoth, give it so much power that there's no accountability. National Assembly, everything they do in terms of public hearing is a ruse. They just go through emotions.
So are we now hostages of INEC forever? Because if we can't depend on the National Assembly and we can't depend on CSOs, who can we look to?
Citizens like you, everybody, should not be demanding, and I've said so that I'll go to court to ask that INEC be probed. There should be a massive probe of how INEC awards this contract. INEC spent $177 million, I understand, or million naira, to fight hacking. And at the eve of the election, when INEC couldn't upload results, somebody starts suggesting hacking. $170 million in dollars. So who procures INEC? What kind of due process competitive bidding does INEC go through? This issue should be investigated. How did INEC prepare for this election? Let's take independent auditors to go and see whether what we see is designed to fail. The International Committee says these guys were not prepared. That's what EU said. Not prepared, but INEC did test run, told us they're prepared. Who signs off on INEC's preparedness? We see, like elections, people argue. If you look at NCDC that does immunization, they're able to take immunization home to home. INEC cannot even take ballot box, not to homes, but to central places. Only 734 places in the country. INEC could not take ballot box on time, in spite of 350 billion. So basically, a lot of questions need to be asked, and I'm telling you why this question not be asked. INEC is being shrouded by a conspiracy, a cottage industry of election monitoring and management. We need to scatter it. In fact, as a matter of rule, if I was going to advise any serious government, first thing is to prohibit any international funding for NGOs to monitor elections. Stop monitoring. You didn't give anything. Look for a credible performance. In fact, you can outsource it to Shell. If you gave Shell or any other logistic company in the world this election, they would deliver it logistic-wise and honestly. So why are we doing this sham of INEC and giving them billions? So for me, throw away INEC or deconstruct it and reset it. Go back to Wales report. Set it up, merit-based application. Appoint the CEO of INEC as you appoint the CEO of Shell or ExxonMobil through a competitive process based on character evaluation. Not nominated by everybody that INEC board is nominated. Look at Umahi, nominated just a couple of months ago, nominated one of her former chief of staff or chief of staff or something like that into that board. What would that person do? Umahi, Hope did one. Omar nominated his person. Then you have maybe Erufai or other governors somewhere. So when you pack those places with persons whose only loyalty is to political leaders and who have not demonstrated competence or integrity in previous undertakings. I told that now Mahmoud was in a TED fund, and when he finished, the House of Reps did a massive report, audited, and they used to negotiate for election rigging next time. That report is there, finding him guilty of terrible things.
These are weighty allegations you're making, Dr. Amadi.
Yes, I said the National Assembly Committee, I'm not talking about Sam Amadi, is there. I'm not alleging. I said they raised the investigation. I said that report is there.
Yes, the report is there, but the comment you made about the elections, we can't prove.
No, I said election was thoroughly rigged, process was collapsed, was incompetent. I'm speaking as a lawyer, PhD from Harvard. I'm not a joker here, my friend. Look, I did administrative law. Nobody can make a rule to use a process and they come back and put a lame criminal argument that you chose not to? How can you choose not to? I'll give an example of 4 instances.
Okay, you give me those
Nigeria,
examples when we come back from this break. Dr. Sam Amadi is on the show with me. Dr. Sam Amadi is the director for the Center for Public Policy and Research, and we're talking about the election process and, of course, how we ended up here where we now have a president-elect, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He'll give us those examples after the break. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Don't go away, Lagos.
You are listening to your number one station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Babe, you barely eating anything. What's wrong?
I'm trying to be careful because I'm not sure of the facilities here.
Oh, I understand. But don't worry. Ernest is your guy.
Ernest? Who's Ernest?
Ernest Liver Salt is your ultimate run-to product that gives fast and effective relief from heartburn, constipation, and indigestion. It dissolves fast and works even faster. It comes in delicious orange, lemon, and plain flavors.
In that case, waiter.
Ernest Liver Salt, your surefire solution to stomach discomfort. Available in all pharmacies nationwide.
Guy, if I tell you all this plenty airtime and data, who are they take flex? Now dash glow dash me, you go believe.
Dash get for this kind of economy. I beg you.
Dey there now, as I buy my glow sim like this, spirit, I first collect 1,000 naira welcome bonus, Sarah. As I come recharge, bam, glow knock me 10 times airtime bonus. I also enjoy double data. Join.
Wait, oh, you mean 1,000 naira welcome bonus?
Yes.
Plus 10 times airtime bonus?
Yes.
Plus double data again?
Yes,
For which universe now?
The glow bracket universe now. You want try?
Oh, no wonder boys they flex anyhow on top phone 247 non-stop. Hey, fuck 'em.
My people, not let grass grow under your Lego. Go get your glow sim today. Dial star 777 hash to buy and enjoy 10 times airtime bonus plus up to double data. Offer day for both new and existing subscribers there.
Glow Unlimited.
Moves must be made. My people just to work hard. Dreams and challenges motivate us. But sometimes, when the journey gets tiring, all we need is something to push our limits.
Reactor, ignite your energy, bring out your inner champion. Reactor, ignite your energy, bring out your inner champion.
Reactor Energy Drink. What you need to push your limits. Push your limits.
Hello, Mrs. Martins.
Yes. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, how may I help you?
Junior's body temperature is high and he's complaining about headaches and body aches.
Not to worry. Get Bruston and suspension.
Okay, ma. I'll call you back.
Bruston End Suspension for Children is a sweet-tasting brand of ibuprofen which provides relief against toothache, pains, and fever in children after 30 minutes.
Hello, ma. Oh, Junior, stop that.
Is everything okay, Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, ma. Junior is fine now. In fact, Junior, sorry, ma. I'll call you back.
Bruston End Suspension for Children. Always take the product after meal. If symptoms persist after 2 days, consult your doctor. A quality product from Rambaxay.
99.3 Nigeria Info, your number one station for talk. Let's talk.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. This is a coverage, perhaps the final leg, of the just concluded presidential election that has seen Nigeria presented with Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the president-elect. He's been presented, of course, with his certificate of return. I've got two gentlemen on the show with me. Dr. Sam Amadi is the Director, Center for Public Policy and Research. Chief Andy Obuoforibo is on the show with me as well. He's a political analyst. Chief Obuoforibo, let me come to you. You were making points about oversight of INEC. You've heard some of the things that Dr. Amadi has said before the break. What are your thoughts?
So, Sandra, I 100% agree with Dr. Amadi that ultimately the ultimate the body with the ultimate oversight over INEC, of course, is the National Assembly. National Assembly has very wide powers of oversight over INEC because they have the power of the purse over INEC. And I also agree with him that the reason why that oversight and every other piece of control over INEC seems to come to naught and often doesn't seem to be used is that it is in the interest of the political class. It is in their benefit for INEC to be either ineffectual or incompetent or downright corrupt. So they don't want INEC to do the right thing. I mean, if you were a politician, I mean, think about it. If you're a politician and a corrupt politician, one without morals or ethics, what would you rather do? Spend the money, time, and effort required for a nationwide campaign, be of good character for years, do things in the public interest such that you have a track record on which you campaign, or for people to leave it to chance, for the people to see you and like you and vote for you? Or would you rather, capture an organization of a few hundred or a few thousand people, bribe them, induce them, or whatever it is, to get that a result? And when there is no, when there are no ethics, people will choose the latter. So when we talk about oversight of INEC, I think we have to, in many ways, forget about institutions, government institutions, forget about anything run by politicians. You can't expect a ram to vote for Salah, like you always say, Sandra. You can't, expect the yam to support the goat. So, in this situation, I think one thing that we need to push, but we've seen we're able as a people to force the hand of the National Assembly we force them to give us electronic transmission. What they now ended up doing, what INEC ended up doing, was finding a way to bypass electronic transmission. So I think in the next round of forcing National Assembly's hand when it comes to electoral reform, what we need to be pushing for is reforms that embed more transparency, reforms that force INEC to open more of its processes to the public. The public needs more visibility on what INEC is doing. And I think something like this. So, for example, let me just give one trivial example. I want this to be debated. I don't think that this is a final solution here by any means. This is my first suggestion. I think, for example, we now have IREV, we now have BVAS, right? We have under the law a statement that that results must be compared to this. What we need is a removal of or a change, an amendment to those provisions that say results are not official until INEC announces them at the end. What I mean by that, I'm not saying that make it a free-for-all, let everybody announce a result. But imagine how different things would have been if the law says that once a result is up on IREV, that result is the official result, and that no result coming from INEC can deviate from it, and puts a cap and a time limit and says, if the result is not up on IREV by a particular time of day or a particular time after the closing of polls, then at that point INEC has breached. Imagine if it was that clear, that visible. Suddenly people have something to back up on. It's not just, okay, INEC has put these guidelines in place. Then secondly...
But however, INEC did put...
Yes, exactly.
And overlooked it.
Exactly. Then secondly, and again, this is the point I made earlier on before Dr. Amadi joined us. I think we need to have some sorts of recourse during the election for situations where you've carried the case to INEC. Like he said, INEC is, like Dr. Amadi said, INEC is semi-judicial. INEC is there also presiding over issues in real time. When they raise issues, and when the parties raise issues, INEC gets to judge those issues either correct or not. But in situations where INEC is the one being accused, we need some sort of framework, and that is why I'm saying people need to put heads together and figure it out. But we need a way to adjudicate in real time issues where it's INEC being accused of committing an electoral crime. It's issues where it's INEC being accused of subverting or bypassing the electoral rules. Because in those situations, currently, all that happens is each INEC officer covers for the one below her, and it gets all the way to the chairman, and the chairman says go to court. We need a way to pull those issues out of the INEC chain of command for somebody else to adjudicate. Now, I don't know who that somebody else should be, but we need to start as a nation having that conversation, asking that question till we can think of a better way to do that.
All right. Dr. Amadi, let me come back to you now. INEC seems to have two roles, right? So the first role is to conduct the election. The second role is to make sure everybody follows the rule. What happens when INEC itself doesn't follow the rules? Who is in a position to make sure INEC follows its own rules?
Well, the person who is in a position to ensure that INEC follows the rules is the court. Interestingly, because of our tendency for reckless litigation, sometimes very useless litigation, and the weakness of our judicial procedure in sorting out reasonable and unreasonable cases, the drafters of the Electoral Act inserted in it a provision that protected INEC from any kinds of order as long as during the electoral period. So no judge would agree to issue an order stopping INEC, for example, from continuing with the counting, and that's why nobody went to court. People asked me for advice, and I told them you can't get that order. Now, that was done to remedy a problem, which is that Nigerians, we saw what happened Basic Beme in June 12. Votes were going on, and the judge in Basic Beme in Benin then, I think, gave order to ABN, Association of Better Nigeria, to stop, truncate the June 12 election. So since then, the notion of judicial intervention while the process is ongoing has been one that Nigerians have viewed badly. So it now culminated in this electoral provision that says prohibits courts from order, but they can hear, but they can't order stop it. The INEC will go ahead with what they're doing. So the remedy for INEC wrong intervention is actually in the judicial, is in the courts and what the courts do. And that's why the court, INEC acts like a regular court, quasi-judicial court, like a court of first instance. It takes petition from people and they make a finding. And the courts wait patiently. Those people go to court. Now, without that provision banning order, anybody could have gone to court and the court will review and say, no, Mr. Mahmoud, you ought to have stopped counting and have reacted to XYZ. Therefore, I give an injunction. Do not continue. Deal with this. We saw that in America, in Florida, in 2000,
yes,
when Bush versus Al Gore,
yes,
where the Secretary of Catherine Harris, Secretary of Florida, Secretary of State, had to make a call regarding child ballots, and she made a decision. It was complained against. She stopped and entered into adjudicatory hearing with her board members, and anyway, they made a decision that they'll go ahead with confirming the result. Then they, like the tribes, then my professor at Harvard, the professor of consumer law, took the case up. They went to the courts. From the court, they went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court confirmed that the decision that Catherine Harris took regarding acknowledging and confirming those votes were properly within her authority. And that's how Judge Bush versus Gore was settled. And the U.S. constitutional scholars think that it was a wrongly determined case, but it was the Supreme Court that gave Bush the validation. But Secretary of State, who is like our own INEC for Florida, in the U.S., elections are run by state officials. She made the first adjudicatory decision, which was taken to court. Court stopped her from further action. The court went to the U.S. appeal court equivalent. They had to also take a case to the Supreme Court. And within a couple of months, I think, or so, before the inauguration of the president, all these matters were sorted out, and Congress had to validate the votes. So
In the U.S. case, it is Congress who ultimately, now the House of Reps particularly, who ultimately decides, they validate the results from state electoral colleges. And finally, they set it. In the Nigeria, okay, INEC validates the score and pronounce a print elect, and then we open process for litigation before May. So whereas the U.S., after vote, the litigation process continues until the November, January for confirmation of the president's swearing in, by which time, 2 to 3 days before, the Congress would have met to certify that the returns from the electoral colleges are proper. So that's how it's designed. Here, INEC is not power without restraint. INEC has power, but that power is subject to judicial review. But it can, the court will say, okay, let INEC do this with its own process, then come to us. The only problem that INEC does not know that it has a responsibility to hear complaints formally and make a decision formally. But they think it's administrative. Just sit there and say, Mr. Chairman, like Dino said, you've done the wrong thing. What did you say? He said, Dino, I won't do that. Let's continue. That's not what INEC is. That's not the decision on record. The decision of INEC in once elections commence, every decision of INEC is a quasi-judicial decision and has to be done on record. Meaning, the people who you record what you said, you confer with your commissioners who are like judges, you repair maybe 30 minutes, you go on conference, you debate it, you even ask your legal advisors to turn in their legal opinion. In that period, you come to a decision. And when you come to a decision, you have exhausted your decision-making power. You become functions officials, meaning you have fully exercised your power. Then the next level of intervention will not be the court to either confirm their exercise of power or invalidate it.
Okay. Chief, what do you think about the points Dr. Madi has made?
No, I think Dr. Madi has assessed it fairly. I think we even have from the United States a more recent example during the 2020 presidential election where supporters of Donald Trump kept claiming that the election was being stolen. And, in places like Pennsylvania, they were going to court while the votes were being counted. They went to court while the votes were being counted. They were in court saying, no, throughout these particular ballots, these mail-in ballots, there was, what they call it, there was malpractice going on, there was fake voting and all of that. And they went to court. Of course, the court dismissed all the cases. That's the court said that there were no, on merit, dismissed the cases on merit, that they hadn't proven their case.
Yes.
So, obviously, in the American system, and then recently, even the election you covered when you were in the U.S. Last year for the midterms, you were in Arizona, Carrie Lake went to court during the election. She was already going. So, like, there is always this attitude within the American system that you can go to court while the election is ongoing, while the counting is going on, and challenge the electoral body. So that's one. Now, I think Dr. Madi is correct when he points to June 12, ABN, Aton, Zerebe, and what that has done to the national psyche, and has gotten also the point where we say, no, it's not a good idea to interrupt midway through. But I think sometimes our national traumas, our rulers use our national traumas against us. There is a tendency, for example, in the same way we went through the trauma of the war, and so that's sometimes waved in our faces a lot of the time. Oh, we don't want another war. Even when people are not talking about violence, even when people are just talking about peaceful agitation, the first answer is, we don't want another war. Are you sure you want to do this, etc., etc.? It's the same way. So I think 1993 is 30 years ago, and Mahmoud Yakubu is not Professor Humphrey Wosu. The quality of people we have as arbiters for our elections has dropped severely. We can't count on INEC to be as above board as NEC was in the Third Republic, or I don't know. So I don't know. I don't want to compare it to FEDECO. That'll be going too far back. But I think ultimately that means we need to reassess some of the privileges that we give to the body. Does this body deserve the benefit of the doubt to say, no, let's not let's not escalate to the courts while they're working. Let's wait till after they've done. Have they earned that benefit? Does this body have the benefit? Have they earned the benefit to say no? If we believe that ICE are violating the Electoral Act, let police not working and arrest them, let ICPs not watch them. Have the body show us over the last 20 years of our democracy that they have earned those protections? And for me personally, the answer is no. Reasonable people can disagree. Honest people can disagree with that assessment, but I think as a nation, we have to have that conversation. And if the overwhelming answer is no, then maybe we need to start putting stronger checks on INEC so that we can actually have free and fair elections. The independence of INEC is not an end in of itself. The independence of INEC is there to serve the purpose of let us have a free and fair election without government influence. But now, even with the on-paper independence and even with these large budgets, INEC is doing these kinds of things and not giving us free and fair elections. I think everything should be on the table, and we need to go back to first principles and say, how do we redesign this process so that the people have more power and INEC fears the people on election day more than INEC fears the politicians? As long as that balance of terror is not there, as long as Professor Mahmoud Yakubu and everybody below him in INEC are more afraid of politicians than they are afraid of the voter, as long as they are more interested in whatever bribes they will receive from politicians than they are in whatever sanction they will receive from the public, we will keep having these problems. So we need to alter that balance in some way.
It's interesting that you keep saying politicians, because the politicians from the APC throughout the process kept saying go to court. INEC itself said go to court. So I want to talk about this very common sentiment of go to court. I'll come to the lawyer in the room, Dr. Sam Amadi. We've heard it from INEC, we've heard it from the APC and its supporters, we've heard it from some analysts. For example, I was listening to Ruben Abati this morning, and he said Tinubu and the APC have shown realpolitik by saying let's win at all costs and then let our opponents go to court. A lot of Nigerians are saying that this is the smart way to do politics. What do you say to that, Dr. Amadi?
Sorry, say a lot of Nigerians say that's the smartest way to
do politics. Win first, win at all costs. Then our opponents should go to the court.
I think they are correct. I think that we are referring to court disputes that the court can't handle. You see, in the study of adjudication, there was a professor who Owen Fish, had a theory, I think, where it was talked about, starting from earlier philosophers, that polycentric disputes, multiple centers, are not disputes for the court to handle. So you can say, well, go to the court, but then will the court be a right venue to determine that ballot boxes were smashed in Ojuelegba, for example, or in Owerri, or in Karaman and Moda? Will the court be a place for saying we were 500,000, 700 people came out to vote, they only allowed 100 to vote, and say the ink has finished, and say we don't have ballot boxes. Therefore, the rest of us didn't go. Are you going to bring those 400 people as witness? So you see that the clever strategy of saying win first, go to court. And then secondly, the Nigerian court doesn't have the capacity, the facility to do what you call discovery, even in civil trials. You can see the U.S. courts maybe take pleadings that are 2,000 pages from more than 10 plaintiffs in a suit. They have the support of the smartest students from the universities. They had everything technology based. Here, I was told that we have technologies for verbal recording at the Supreme Court that refuse to use it. So, if you look at the infrastructure, the intellect, the learning, let's not pretend ourselves. Our legal education has collapsed. It's too elementary. It hasn't got the sophistication that anybody who has schooled abroad will bring to the table. So, we are very smart people, but we don't have the breadth of knowledge to cope with certain complexities. We have not used enough of experts, or we don't have subject matter experts who are also lawyers. Like, for example, in typical Ivy League university in the US, you have PhDs in economics, PhDs in philosophy, political science, statistics, or computer, doing JD law. So the law graduates or law professors are PhDs in social sciences. So there's a lot of intersection in research. So from that perspective, they can really deal with more polycentric disputes that have multiple dimensions, social science aspects, statistical elements, blah, blah, blah. Today we're talking about a million of 25% into third states, and I was on air, and I started talking about sentence structure, simple, compound, and complex sentences, and why that interpretation is disjunctive. You must add them together. You must this and that, not that they're inside. They're different. And people say, oh, boy, you are started speaking a lot of linguistics. So because I was teaching legal writing, and I teach writing, so I understand sentence structure, grammatical. So I said, first we start interpreting a statute from the structure of language, grammar. So most of these tools are not available, and these cognitive competencies are not available. So even if the judges knew well, that's the point I'm making now, even if they had the courage to strengthen out the case, they may lack the capacity
to do it. Okay.
Supervise the empirical, the analytical, and even statistical kind of work required to deal with this tome now of facts, some of which the regulator, and that's the important key here. If INEC had a hearing in between this collation and established core facts, because it has the capacity to go beyond legalese and ease officials, interrogate them, and say this result is fake because blah, blah, blah. We saw some results that had some questionable features. They would have made it easier for the court. So when they now said, well, we're able to invalidate 500 or 1 million from Ashwaju votes and he ended up winning, then the court can focus on the argument of should X have been done.
All right, let's leave it at that. Thank you so much. We're out of time. But Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much for... Okay, all right. The courts are not that adequate, which is why he agrees that you should win first and then go to court. Dr. Amadi is the director, Center for Public Policy and Research. We have a break coming up. I want to hear Chief Obuoforibo's thoughts on that same sentiment. Win first. Let your opponent go to court, or let the loser go to court. But I will take your thoughts when we come back from this break. Lagos, you've been listening to our elections coverage. You now know that your president-elect is Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC. He's received his certificate of return, and I have been speaking with several people about these events since 3 p.m. on this show today. I've got a few seconds when we come back from this break, so I can take a few more thoughts from Chief Obuoforibo, who's still in the studio with me. Don't go away.
We report, you decide. Topical conversations that matter to you.
There are people for personal, religious, whatever reasons who do not want to take a vaccine. And I think they have the rights.
They cannot go to stop insecurity. It's to force people to take vaccine. Let them come and kill me. I can never take it.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Hello, my name is Abdul. My friends ask me how I stay updated with current happenings around me despite my busy work schedules. That's my secret. Everywhere I go, my radio goes with me.
NS to Oga, wetin happen? I don send a go market. I be dey owe you money.
Oga pharmacy, no be your boy I dey call jare. I dey ask bonge medicine wey dey comot any yamayama discomfort for person belle, whether na heartburn, constipation or even indigestion. NS liver salt get lemon, orange and other correct flavors. With NS liver salt, belle go dey balance. Oya Oga pharmacy, sama me one make I go enjoy.
NS liver salt, the ogbonge medicine where they make your belle kulele. Rush and tiny pharmacy, go buy your own now.
Betway is giving you the chance to boost your multi-bet winnings by 700%. To activate your boost, visit betway.com.ng and create a multi-bet that has 2 or more legs. Check your boost on your bet slip and place your bet. It's that simple. The more selections you add, the bigger your boost. All winnings are credited as cash. Betway Win Boost, for the love of the game. No under 18. Responsible gaming.
Moves must be made. My people just to work hard. Dreams and challenges motivate us, but sometimes when the journey gets tiring, all we need is something to push our limits.
Reactor, ignite your energy, bring out your inner champion. Reactor, reactor, ignite your energy, bring out your inner champion. Reactor.
Reactor Energy Drink. What you need to push your limits.
Wahala, Reactor energy, push your limits. No dey tire, no way. Reactor energy drink. Reactor.
Push your limits.
Group D of the I Beg to Differ Tournament of Champions promises fierce battles between three exciting debaters. Olaloye Toluwalashe dazzled us last May, but was stopped by Hamid Olarawaju. If he wants to settle that score, he'll need to emerge from this group. But will Stephanie Amen let him? The August runner-up is here to prove she could have won it all. But to be the girl, she has to beat the girl. Esther Bewaji's fans will love that Group D debates on Thursdays because they say Thursdays are for legends. She smashed scoring records on her cruise to the championship in May, and all that is left between her and the three other champions are the two challengers in this group. This March, it's the I Beg to Differ Tournament of Champions on 99.3 Nigeria Info FM and Wazobia Max TV.
090 888 999 for your pizza. 090 888 999 for Domino's Pizza. It's fast and easy to get Domino's Pizza. Juicy pizza. Just call your number, Domino's go deliver. Domino's Pizza. In 20 minutes, your pizza don't arrive. Just call your number for hot, juicy pizza. 090 888 999 for Domino's Pizza. Domino's Pizza.
You are listening to your number one station for talk.
Your number one station for talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. I'm here with Chief Andy Obuoforibo. A lot of Nigerians are saying the smart way to do politics is win first. Your opponent should go to court. What do you say?
Yeah, it's sad that that's the type of country that these politicians are saying we have. And now we've heard from Dr. Amadi that, who is a lawyer, that the courts don't have the capacity to judge and handle electoral cases. I won't debate that with him. He's the lawyer. He knows more than me about the courts. Now, the politicians know this when they say win first and go to court. They're saying this because they know the courts can handle these cases. So what they do is they steal your vote, and then when you complain, they tell you that you are overheating the polity. But they are the ones overheating the polity by stealing the vote. So what I'm going to say to Nigerians is, when you're voting on election day, do everything to make sure your vote counts. Everything within the law to make your vote count. You, the Nigerian people, win first. Then let the politicians go to court.
Okay. On that note, we'll bring you the news. After the news at 6, Lagos. Can you be friends or stop being friends with someone because of politics? Can you end a friendship because of a politician that your friend supports? Would you do that? Let's have a conversation after the AFCFTA discussion show. It's time for the news at 6 o'clock.
And I want to assume that you would run because I want to give the listeners context for the conversation.
In 2019, you were running mate to Atiku Abubakar. What did you learn then that you will not repeat this time?
Yes, when is the president coming out to address us?
There's a few things. One, I have a burden and a passion for young people.
The fact that you have elected a man does not mean then you begin to order him around. The president will do whatever is good for the country at any given time.
Mr. Adeshino, isn't the president responsible to the people?
What should the next president do to root out stakeholders who are complicit?
You fire those that need to be fired are fired. It's looking like a brand new Chelsea, attacking with so much fluidity. And what can you say about that, Martin? I know you follow Chelsea quite closely.
I live close to the Chelsea training ground. That's what you mean by that. I'm not.